Hello, so this is a video I've been wanting to make for a very, very long time, and I don't know, it just seems like a better time than any, considering that I'm not really cashing in on the hype of Change the Channel, and I'm not really, making a video about Brad Jones, which would probably be the better thing to do for, like, views and whatever else to make a video of. But I just have always wanted to make this video of how I became disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic. And this was way before Change the Channel. Back before Change the Channel was a thing, and Skurs Lupa / Allison Pregler started that Twitter thread that unintentionally started that Twitter thread when she just burst out with a bunch of information and criticisms and just pointing out little stupid things and other stupid things that Channel Awesome, Doug Walker, Rob Walker, and a bunch of other people involved with Channel Awesome have done over the years, which led subsequently to a lot of the other creators that were attached to the site to bring up their grievances, the older ones more so than the newer ones that got brought on within the last 5 or so years. The ones that were involved heavily with, dealing with the site management and then shooting the movies and then a whole bunch of other stuff that was incredibly stupid. I personally started to grow disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic as a show, as a character, and Doug Walker as well, when it comes to a creator, as someone who was writing the Nostalgia Critic, as someone who I kind of looked up to, I kind of admired, or not really admired, but like I was impressed by most of the time, because I started to get into the Nostalgia Critic around the time of the relaunch back in 2013, 2014, after Doug ended the show and then did the movie to wrap up the Critic's arc and everything, and remaining plot threads and whatever else that were there and everything. And I still haven't actually seen any of the 3 anniversary movies. Considering I think they have them up on YouTube in parts, or at the very least they have the 3rd movie up in parts, because on the Channel Awesome site it was divvied up into smaller chunks and branded as a miniseries, but then released on DVD as a full-fledged 3-hour movie. But they don't have the first 2 anniversary films, I believe, on there. I was one of the people that got brought in around that time in terms of discovering the Nostalgia Critic. Although the Nostalgia Critic wasn't the first internet reviewer that I had started watching. Actually, I think one of the first internet reviewers like the Nostalgia Critic that did videos in the same style that I actually started watching first was El Nej. If you don't know who he is, he was briefly on Channel Awesome for about a year or 2. And everything. He doesn't really do video reviews anymore. He doesn't even really upload to his channel anymore because of real life stuff that he does. Every so often he'll do Pokemon reviews, but he hasn't done any of those in years. So I think he's quietly retired from the whole internet reviewing thing and YouTube in general, because he doesn't even do like song parodies anymore, which is a shame, because I think he is a genuinely talented dude, and I like seeing videos from him, but I understand why he's quietly retired from the whole internet reviewing scene and everything. I'd love to see more stuff from him in the future, no matter what he does, because I think he's genuinely really talented and a good reviewer, good video maker and everything, so yeah. But enough sucking his dick. Anyways, I started watching him first, and I remember hearing in one of his reviews, I can't remember which exact one, I think it was the one for, I think it was his Christmas review for the Grinch. I could be wrong. Or it was one of his other videos that involved a Christmas movie. I think it was the Grinch, though, when he mentioned the Nostalgia Critic, and I had no idea who the Nostalgia Critic was. It would take another couple of years for me to actually start watching the Nostalgia Critic. And for the first 5 years, I would say actually the Nostalgia Critic had a pretty decent amount of consistent quality to it. And it's true that it wasn't necessarily much of a review show, much more than it was a sketch comedy sort of quippy sort of thing that Doug Walker did, as he has said himself at the beginning, to just make his friends laugh and other people laugh that he knew. But it grew into this whole big thing once people started catching on and started watching on YouTube. And Doug perfectly captured an audience when he first started uploading stuff to YouTube and being in the Nostalgia Critic persona and everything. And he is one of the guys that pioneered internet reviewing as we know it today. So, props where it is due. But the thing about Doug is that he's not necessarily much of a critic. He's not necessarily much of a reviewer. He even admitted that himself in character as the Nostalgia Critic within the 3rd anniversary movie. And he even admits this every so often as, like, jokey, snarky kind of stuff within, within the Nostalgia Critic series itself and everything. And he's even admitted that he's doing the Nostalgia Critic now more out of necessity than any genuine passion. And it's pretty revealing, and you can actually tell this by how each Nostalgia Critic episode is written, shot, produced, and put together. And just Doug's attitude towards it behind the scenes and everything. Versus a lot of other internet reviewers who do video reviews more so out of passion than anything else. Even people who do stuff like Doug does. I can name several other people who have done, or that do video reviews that have more genuine passion in their stuff than Doug does, and actually get more consistent quality as a result of it. But I don't necessarily blame Doug for still doing the Nostalgia Critic, considering Demo Reel flopped, and that game show really went nowhere, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Considering that at the time, for some reason, although the stories conflict on this kind of information, Channel Awesome wouldn't start their own YouTube channel until around 2014. And until then, it was the League of Super Critics YouTube channel, which uploaded cut-down versions of the Nostalgia Critic reviews and everything, and other people's reviews and everything, getting the things from Blip. Apparently, it was run by Blip themselves, but it seemed more like it was a conglomerate sort of thing that Channel Awesome was involved with. How else would they get the master files for the videos and everything? And on top of that, there were several other reviewers involved with the League of Super Critics YouTube channel and everything. So I really, really don't know a lot of the information behind the scenes, but it seemed like it wasn't just Blip that uploaded their stuff to YouTube. It kind of seemed like it was a conglomerate that involved Channel Awesome, Brad Jones, I believe Nostalgia Check, and several other people. And I think had Channel Awesome started their YouTube channel, like if they started a YouTube channel to archive the Nostalgia Critic and whatever else they were doing, even Demo Reel, I think if they started a YouTube channel back in 2012, after the Nostalgia Critic ended, and started re-uploading older Nostalgia Critic episodes and other sketches and whatever else that Doug did over the course of the last 5 years that he was doing the Nostalgia Critic, and then also started doing demo reel through it, I think they could have held a more consistent audience and, been more able to expand upon what Doug was wanting to do after he retired the Critic. Now, obviously, there would have been problems with it, like YouTube's Content ID stuff and whatever else, but they could have easily re-edited the videos to be able to get around Content ID, or they could have done counterclaims, which is what I'm assuming that they do now, for the most part. But I also don't think that they, are re-uploading older Nostalgia Critics unless they know they can get away with it now, because they haven't re-uploaded an older Nostalgia Critic episode in years to the Channel Awesome YouTube channel. And as far as I know, the Nostalgia Critic episode list on the Channel Awesome YouTube channel is incomplete with pre-2013 Critic episodes. But yeah, and I don't necessarily blame them, because some of the reviews themselves are not necessarily reviews, but the critic just sitting there and doing like a sort of reaction style sort of thing to the things and just making some quick snarky jokes and whatever else, which don't necessarily count as criticism. But hey, it was more of a comedy show than it was a review show anyways, so pick your poison. But luckily there are fan uploads if you want to watch those. But yeah, like a lot of views on YouTube around the time were for fan uploads of the Nostalgia Critic. And the site was generally losing traffic anyways due to the Nostalgia Critic being the biggest draw, and it's really no surprise that he was. Just having all of that be like it was. So it's just like, if they handled things a little bit more smartly or smarter, if they handled a lot more things more smarter than they actually did, I think that they could have easily spun off into different things that they wanted to do, rather than just having to reboot the Nostalgia Critic and bring it back. That's honestly the thing that I don't really get about them, but then again, no one ever said that the people at Channel Awesome were that smart, so. So when it comes to my disillusionment with the Nostalgia Critic myself, trouble really started in, I would say, 2015. Up until then, I would say the 2013 and 2014 reviews were consistently okay. Like, I wouldn't say that they were as great as the older Nostalgia Critics, but every so often Doug could actually pull a legitimately good review / script out of his ass to actually have some genuine, poignant thoughts and opinions and whatever else to be expressed in the videos. And I think Doug has had some really good reviews in the past when he's actually passionate about, examining the problems within the films rather than just making fun of them or doing jokes that don't relate at all to the movie or TV show or whatever he's looking at, Like, I think his Patch Adams review is really good to point out the bad things that can happen with a biopic. I think his Bridge to Terabithia review is actually pretty good. And the Shark Boy and Lava Girl and Spy Kids 3 videos, I think, are actually pretty good, considering they were in the same vein of saying Robert Rodriguez is a good director, but he has just had some shit films under his belt. Which I've seen both those films, by the way, both when I was a kid and years later, and jeez, those films are legitimately bad. And whatever else. But 2015 is around the time where I think a lot of people started to grow disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic, not just me. Mid-2015, when Jurassic World was released, is when Doug broke the final rule that he had when it came to reviewing movies for the Nostalgia Critic. In that, in 2013, when he decided to relaunch the Critic, he said himself in the Review Must Go On video that, I think that's what it was called, that he wouldn't review films that were in theaters, but he wanted to be able to review films that were current. Doug, for the most part, kept to this word for the next couple of years, and he's sort of done a similar thing with how he's reviewed films that are in theaters, but I'll get to that in a second. Mainly with, he only reviews current films, for the most part, although there are a few more that slip in here and there that don't necessarily relate to the whole nostalgia part of the Nostalgia Critic name / moniker. He usually keeps current films to films based on older properties. Like, Man of Steel was based on Superman. They were the older Superman movies. So I think Doug tried to keep a consistency about that. And in that case, I don't mind that he started reviewing newer films. Where I did have a problem with it is that he started reviewing films that were still in theaters as they were in theaters. He tried to pass this off as YouTube's content ID system screwing over his uploads more consistently, which, yeah, YouTube's content ID system is a genuinely broken system. Like, there are countless videos on YouTube itself and other places and just other people talking about it that explain that YouTube's content ID system is a broken, exploitable mess and has been that for a very long time, and YouTube legitimately does nothing to fix the problems. Like, they think that they do, or they say that they do, but they legitimately do not. And I don't think anyone's surprised to hear that. But Doug, this kind of came. This is just a thing that Doug has done over the years, which is, rather than, maybe adapt his reviews to more consistently abide by certain standards, like years ago when he did the 5-second movies and all that, and then also with his review of The Room, and Quentin Reviews actually pointed this out in his video on Channel Awesome for his Fallen Titans series. Doug didn't really make videos that were in the line of fair use, even though Doug at the time did try to champion free speech, and then he also brought up fair use and what he called satire parody clause. I know what Doug was getting at. That is part of fair use, where if you do a parody or a satire on something, it is fair use. You don't need the permission of the company to make a parody or a satire and post it to the internet, as long as you don't make money off of it, as far as I know, unless if it's, transformative in nature. Granted, there's a lot more that goes into this shit, so you're gonna have to do your own research on that, but, and that's putting it very mildly, but, yeah, the 5-second movie uploads, however, are not fair use at all. They're literally just cut down versions of movies that you're putting on the internet. Like, I don't really get how Doug couldn't see this, but granted, Doug's a whiny bitch that always has to have his way, or else nothing. His way or the highway is essentially Doug's attitude towards basically everything. But, yeah. But I don't even think that YouTube's content ID system was necessarily something he couldn't work around. He just didn't want to have to put in the work. Granted, YouTube should have more or less stringent policies when it comes to content ID and their algorithms, but that's for them to do. And unfortunately, they're not going to do it. So, but yeah, you work with the systems that you have, is basically what I'm trying to get by here. And then he started the whole where's the fair use kind of thing, which bundled with Grade A Under A doing his make YouTube great again sort of thing. Those were things that were trying to be done in 2015, 2016 to make YouTube better, but it didn't really accomplish much, unfortunately. Maybe it started to, but then the whole adpocalypse and Article 15 and all that bullshit really kind of screwed YouTube over, and I'm not surprised that that happened. And all that got bundled together in conjunction with a lot of different things that screwed over a lot of things that were starting to be more better on YouTube, but just forced it back into the Dark Ages. When they were starting to come out of the Dark Ages, when it comes to a bunch of their systems and everything. But yeah. But when he did the Jurassic World review, that is where I started to break in terms of still liking the Nostalgia Critic. Before then, the Nostalgia Critic was very hit or miss. And I don't think it helped that Doug was continually doing the editorials, where as the Nostalgia Critic, every other week he would do a short form video that was sort of a video essay that took on a topic that Doug wanted to talk about, but a lot of the time I don't think Doug had the mental fortitude or ability to talk about these things, so the videos came off more as just this guy rambling and not really having a lot of good points. I think the worst one is probably his whitewashing video, but then also his hype backlash video, which is he seriously misconstrued what hype backlash means, and he mixed it up with people getting mad at films that are current and have too much hype around them with people getting mad at films that get popular over time, you know, or films that are legitimately good that deserve the hype, but they get too much hype around them. You know, that's not hype backlash. That's a different trope. What is it called? It's something else. It's a subgenre or a subtrope of hype backlash, but yeah, you can look up on TV Tropes what that is exactly. And I even put it on the Nostalgia Critics TV Tropes page on it in the YMMV section. It's popular now, it sucks. There we go. He mixed those two tropes up, and the video comes off as a stupid mess. The same thing with his whitewashing video, because he really tried to equate different types of casting to other types of casting that didn't make sense to try to equate to each other. I legitimately do not know what he was trying to get at. And then there's a thing where Doug, in that video, tried to take a stance on things, but then tried to go with a more moderate / centrist approach to it, and it doesn't work. It does not work. But yeah, so when it came to Jurassic World, he would film more sketches than he actually did for a Nostalgia Critic episode, and he had himself and the other people who were regularly in the Nostalgia Critic at the time, and even nowadays, record or reenact certain parts of the movies. The problem, however, is I don't think Doug saw the majority of these movies more than once and in the theaters before filming them. And I don't think a lot of the actors actually did see these movies before they shot these reviews, which is the problem with them. The thing with the Nostalgia Critic is, or any other video reviewing thing that is a more formal sort of review with clips and whatever else, is that you need the clips for context, and you need the clips so that you can watch the movie multiple times in a more closed setting and actually try to absorb as much information from the movie as possible to be able to form a good or a justified opinion on what you watched, or else you're going to come off as someone who doesn't understand how the movie, how the movie was trying to do things and what it was trying to do. And that was one of the pitfalls of doing movies that were still in theaters, is that Doug couldn't watch the movies multiple times unless he went to go back and pay to watch the movie again, which, considering he thinks that these movies are bad, I'm really doubting that he was willing to do. You know? By the way, go to Shinobi-03's channel. He did an entire series of, arguing against the Nostalgia Critic episodes on the Jurassic Park films, because he himself is a big Jurassic Park fan, and he does a good job at breaking down those videos and explaining how Doug is not really a fan of Jurassic Park. He just likes the movies because they're dinosaur movies. On top of that, Doug keeps repeating the joke of, parroting Ian Malcolm's line of, the marketing of dinosaurs. You just sell it and you reproduce it and you sell it, and all that. Doug keeps making that joke in every single fucking Jurassic Park movie review. And it's like, why? That's not even a good joke. It wasn't even funny the first time. Why do you keep doing it? I understand consistency when it comes to doing reviews of a series of movies, but you gotta have better references to your older reviews when it comes to that. I don't really know. But yeah. And I admit, Jurassic Park 2 and 3 aren't really that good. But it's like, I don't think that they're necessarily, at least Lost World isn't necessarily as bad as Doug continually tries to say it is. But yeah. So when it came to these clipless reviews, as he started calling them, the problems would arise when it comes to how they reenacted the movies, how Doug would introduce a lot of the scenes, and just how badly executed a lot of these reviews were. Because Doug tried to hammer in some hard-ass points when it comes to these movies. And a lot of the things that he was talking about really made no sense for him to bring up as bad points, or they were very subjective, Like, the thing in the Jurassic World review where he said, did they paint over the animatronic dinosaur that they used for filming? It's like, yeah, oftentimes studios nowadays will paint over something with CG to make it more convincing. Or to fix any continuity errors, or redo a design on something that didn't really work the first time around. Like, Captain America Civil War. If you look at behind-the-scenes photos of when they were shooting the airport scene, where all the heroes fight each other, Spider-Man had a very different costume than we saw in the finished film and in Homecoming and Far From Home, and Infinity War. They were still tweaking the design as they were going along with the production of the film, but the physical suit itself looks very, very different from the final suit. And so, for Captain America Civil War, because they didn't have a finished suit and they already shot the shit out of those scenes, shot the scenes is what I meant to say. They already shot that shit. They painted over Spider-Man with the current design of the Stark suit. You know, I'm not gonna lie. I think the Stark suit actually looks better than the suit that they wanted to go with. You know, but So basically, yeah, that's an example of what studios can do when it comes to this. So yeah, and just because something is practical does not automatically make it better, and just because something is practical doesn't mean it can't be enhanced with CGI, or computer help. When it comes to dinosaurs and everything, the first Jurassic Park film, and I think even the next two after it, had help from CG. And I'm not going to be one of those fanboys that say the CG holds up great in Jurassic Park. It holds up really well, but you can tell it's definitely of the time. It's from 1993. The CGI was not going to be that great. It's good, but I think for the HD transfer, if they wanted to, they could have just re-rendered everything in higher definition and better fidelity and all that, and the film would hold up better as a result. Just going to say that right there. And yeah, but they just wanted to scan in the film and just remaster, which is fine. But still, they could have re-rendered all the computer-generated elements if they wanted to. Granted, that would also rely on them still having those files. So, and we don't know if they do. So, yeah. But yeah, so then Doug kept these films for the most part, minus Pixels and Phantom of the Opera and fucking Hocus Pocus, as films that related to nostalgia-related things. Pixels, I think he was trying to actually have a good point when it comes to Adam Sandler movies, and for that, I gave that one an okay pass in terms of it being a thing. And I think it's probably the most that I don't think Doug had the most amount of hate for, when it comes to the films that he did that as, where he immediately had to say something, He had something to say about Adam Sandler movies and the fact that they went down in quality, and especially this decade, and even Adam Sandler looks tired in his own movies and doesn't care anymore. And I think that is where Doug's strengths lie, is when he's actually passionate about something, he gets a better review out of it. But yeah. But then Doug went on to make more clipless reviews. And he did two that I felt were entirely pointless to do as clipless. Phantom of the Opera, which I still haven't seen to this day because I just refuse to watch it because I'm just like, why? And then Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus, he previously reviewed on his Disney-cember series, which, by the way, he didn't actually do a Disney-cember review series for 2018, as far as I'm aware. Unless I missed it, he didn't. So, I guess that series is over with. Wouldn't be the first spin-off Doug series to end at some point, just quietly. But anyways, correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, the Hocus Pocus review is one of the worst Nostalgia Critic episodes I have ever seen. Some people love it, but I don't understand why. You can love it, I just don't think you should. It's not a review. It is a very bad Saturday Night Live sketch that goes on for way too fucking long. He did not have to make that 30 minutes long. He really didn't. He could have gotten the point across in less time. And on top of that, it's not a review. He doesn't actually say any of his opinions on the movies. To get any kind of reference for why he's saying the things that he does, you need to A, watch the movie, B, watch his Disney-cember on it. Then he followed it up a couple of months later with a re-review for Disney-cember on Hocus Pocus. Not only that, but the Hocus Pocus review completely rehashes the lesson on guilty pleasures that he did back in the Moulin Rouge review, And the Moulin Rouge review was more entertaining, at the very least. And I felt was a more passionate and genuine effort from Doug for a Nostalgia Critic episode and review. The fact that it was also musical, I think, really helped. And I think whenever Doug does get musical as Nostalgia Critic, we get a more entertaining Nostalgia Critic episode. But Hocus Pocus, that didn't, on top of Phantom of the Opera, with Phantom of the Opera, they did not, those reviews did not need to be clipless. You know? It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever that the Hocus Pocus review and the Phantom of the Opera reviews were clipless. I never got that at all. I understand current movies that you want to review as the critic being clipless, but I do not understand movies that have been out for literal decades at this point doing that. Disney really, I don't think, cares about Hocus Pocus that much. Sure, they'll have it be sold, they'll have it on DVD and Blu-ray and whatever else, but it's not one of their prized films from the 90s. Like, it's not even that great of a film. It's just a film you watch for general entertainment on Halloween. Or any other time. There are bad things within the film, and I think it could have made for an entertaining Nostalgia Critic episode if the review wasn't clipless. That's the main thing I have with it. But yeah, but then I think it was either later that year or the year after. Christmas with the Kranks. That review, I think, really told Doug's audience that he does not care what they think. And he does not care to improve himself or the critic whatsoever. Christmas with the Kranks. The entire review is centered around the critic getting pulled back in time to 2007, 2008, and doing reviews like he did when he was first starting out. However, I'm pretty sure Doug completely forgot and didn't even bother to check, or worse, he did this to emphasize how much he doesn't care to go back to that style, by only vanilla reviewing the movie itself with just clips from the movie. But the thing about older nostalgia critics from the first 5 years of the show is that the way Doug did the reviews, he pulled in clips from other points in the movies to comment on the current scenes. Not just for like juxtaposition, but it's just like, instead it was just, you know, to have characters within the film say a snarky comment in response to what was currently going on. Or he pulled clips from other sources that did the same job and were funny because it's a joke that way. And then the critic would also have some wordplay here and there for jokes and whatever else. And the main draw of the critic was his reactions to what was going on in the movies while he was doing his reviews. Doug completely disregarded this. He completely disregarded any criticisms people had that could have been genuinely helpful to future Nostalgia Critic reviews, all for the point of saying fuck off. That he's not going to listen to any criticisms aimed at him or the critic or the show, and he does not care. Okay? That is where I started to be more disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic. And the thing about this is, 2017, Doug started going back, I'm pretty much sure it's a throwback, as a quiet throwback to his earlier style of the Nostalgia Critic for 2017. He got rid of the editorials, which, thank fuck, because those weren't that good. And he started doing reviews every week again. And then he didn't have as many sketches throughout the entire year. Yeah, if you watch all of his 2017 Nostalgia Critic reviews, there aren't a lot of sketches. Hell, there aren't even a lot of the other actors in the reviews. But yeah, that is very much the thing with how that went. You know, I'm pretty sure Christmas with the Kranks was in 2016. Then to immediately go back on that the next year, hell, even over the next few reviews, I think is entirely hypocritical and stupid. Like, yeah, that was something I noticed over time in 2017 when I was still watching the Nostalgia Critic. Doug consistently started doing reviews every week again, and he started to not have as many sketches in them. As a throwback, I'm assuming, to when he started the Nostalgia Critic and did it in that style. You know? It only leads Christmas with the Kranks review to just look weird in retrospect. Like, you basically told all of your critics and older fans to fuck off because you weren't going to listen to them and you weren't going to go back to that older style because you didn't like how you now don't like how you used to go back to that style, which, by the way, I believe when Team 4-Star or Little Karibo does that. I do not believe it when you do it, Doug. And if you want to know what I mean by that, ask me in the comments. But to immediately do a turnaround and say, hey, why don't I do an homage to what I did back in the day and do what you did quietly as to not look like a fucking hypocrite, that's why I was quiet, I think is entirely fucking stupid. I think that is entirely fucking stupid. It makes absolutely no sense. Other than you just change your mind based on whatever the fuck you want to do one day versus the next. There's no continuity between Doug's thoughts on what he wants to do for the Nostalgia Critic. You know? Yeah. It's really fucking dumb. It is legitimately fucking dumb. You know? I'm just gonna say that right there. But yeah. None of this left me to be surprised when the Change the Channel stuff happened, and a lot of people brought up their misgivings with Doug and how he was when they shot the movies and how he acted behind the scenes and a whole bunch of other stuff. You know, I wasn't surprised that Doug did this because I witnessed this as a fan of the Nostalgia Critic. You know? You probably clicked on this video because you read the title, and I became disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic because these little things added up over time. I've been meaning to make this video for a while now. And after Change the Channel happened, no better time, like, at all. So yeah, and I don't think that there's a bigger insult Doug could have done to the fans that were actually paying attention than saying, fuck off, I'm not caring what you guys are thinking or saying, then immediately turning around and doing that. Doing what everybody wanted to see. You know? You need to be consistent in what you do. Otherwise, you come across as a hypocrite or an idiot. And unfortunately, Doug Walker, at a lot of the time, has proven that he is these things. He is an idiot. He is a hypocrite. And it just led to me being disillusioned with the Nostalgia Critic. If Change the Channel didn't happen, I probably would have just floated away from the Nostalgia Critic naturally over time. Considering I was just watching the Nostalgia Critic out of obligation before that anyways. Doug's never going to change, as he's shown with sticking with Channel Awesome, with all that. And to quickly get into Brad Jones, if you don't know, Brad Jones is literally just one of the biggest pieces of shit to come out of Change the Channel. Next to Doug, next to Rob, next to Mike Machad, next to a lot of different people that are still involved with Channel Awesome. Now, I wasn't going to shit on Brad for sticking with Channel Awesome. He can do whatever he feels that he needs to and justify it however he's going to justify it. He stayed with Channel Awesome because Doug and Rob are his friends. Okay. I didn't shit on Brad for an entire year because I don't think he deserved any real criticism for staying with Channel Awesome. And he didn't say anything initially for a long-ass time. But then, there was an interview he did months later, last year, where he basically passed everyone off who was complaining as people who were mad that they never got Applebee's. Or that they didn't get Applebee's. That is textbook cherry picking for arguments. Brad, this literally does not make any sense whatsoever. And on top of that, as we found out through former friends of his, it's hypocritical. Brad Jones himself hated when they shot To Boldly Flee. And I'm assuming the other two films as well. He visibly did not like certain parts of that movie. Like, whether it's behind the scenes stuff that other people on the set had witnessed, or it's in the final product. He didn't like that. He didn't care for some of the jokes. He didn't care for some of the things that were happening. You know? And then, behind the scenes, or just after the fact, he shat on Doug for what they did when they filmed those things. When they filmed those movies. When they had those scripts. And all that. He himself made fun of the movies after the fact. Which is a whole mess of problems right there. Now, when it comes to Brad, first of all, the cherry picking of the people who got mad that they didn't get Applebee's. That's not what people were mad about, asshole. And you know it. People were mad that there wasn't any concessions or water on the sets when they started filming the first movie. I'm assuming maybe the two other movies as well, but definitely at the very least the first movie. And a lot of people also complained of terrible working conditions, shit scripts, bad direction, and a genuine apathy, or general apathy, on set by the people who were producing the movie. That either wrote, directed, which both those were Doug, produced, or just put the film together. You can't just ignore a lot of genuine or general shit that people are giving Doug, Rob, Channel Awesome, whoever, by just calling everyone whiners who were sad or mad that they didn't get Applebee's. To not have snacks on a film set, to any degree, even an indie film, to not have water on sets, especially when you're going to film in a hot fucking desert, to not, cater to any of the people who are filming your fucking movie, that are taking time out of their busy schedules and losing money, actually, by, filming your fucking movie over the course of a week or two, that even flew halfway across the world to do it, is entirely fucking stupid and very bad to do that. You couldn't have spent a little bit of money to get bottles of water and food trays and whatever else from fucking Walmart or wherever? Really? You couldn't have spent any money for tens of people who were shooting your fucking movie. I'm not just talking to actors either, people behind the scenes as well. Yeah. And as far as I know, only one person complained about not getting, or not going to a restaurant, which might have been Applebee's, I don't fucking know. And that person complained because, I can't remember if they just genuinely forgot him, or if they didn't, or they just didn't have any room in their car, so they just left him and never came back to get him. But that's also a dick move. You don't do that. Sorry, you don't fucking do that. When everyone else is going to the restaurant to eat food after a long, hellish week of shooting, or whenever the hell they did it, and you forget someone or just leave them behind, that's a shitty, shitty thing to do. Brad, fuck off. Then, there's the whole swatting business that Brad has brought to the table. Now, one or two of these might have happened, which there's only 2 examples that I can think of. So at the very least, I can believe that maybe one of these things happened. But Brad is genuinely lying about the severity of the one I'm pretty sure most likely did happen. So there are 2 swatting events that Brad has talked about, I believe. The one I want to talk about is where Brad got someone crank called the Springfield police. I believe it was a crank call. If it was any other kind of call, correct me. But someone crank called the police, Springfield police, told them Brad Jones was suicidal, and they sent a police officer to check in to make sure everything was okay. For one, that's really not a swatting. They just told them that they thought Brad was in trouble. Okay. And, you know, the police have records of who lives where within a given town or city. So they just looked up the information, I'm assuming. I doubt anyone really knows where Brad lives. But yeah. And it was just one police officer, most likely if this incident is true, that got sent over to check on them. Hardly a swatting. You know, there are more serious and significant cases of people getting swatted to where teams of SWAT officers, SWAT police officers, get sent to people's houses while they're streaming on Twitch or YouTube or wherever because people sniped their IP address and sent it to the police. Yeah. And people have legitimately gotten hurt from that happening. You know? And to do that is a very, very shitty thing. But to oversell an incident on that is really fucking stupid. Then Brad's wife. I just want to address this right now. Brad's wife, I forget your name, I'm sorry. Allison did not do anything about that. She had nothing to do with it. She has never told a single one of her followers, of her fans, or anyone else to shit on anybody who's still connected with Channel Awesome. She has problems with Channel Awesome, and she has problems with Brad, but she has never, ever told anyone to shit on you guys. Okay? She has, in fact, said the opposite. And many other people connected to Change the Channel or who support Change the Channel have said the opposite as well. You know? It's only the stupids, the crazies, and the trolls that have anything to do with bad experiences when it comes to this shit. Okay? Putting that out right there. And on top of that, you were grieving at that time that you accused Allison of, / Obscure Slupa, of doing that shit. You weren't in your right state of mind. You were emotionally compromised by the death of your father. You said yourself you were at his funeral when you texted Allison. Okay? Or a ceremony or something like that. Do you not think that your emotions influenced your state of mind towards that? Can we not just admit when our emotions get the better of ourselves and influence too much our judgment? I just want to put that out there. I just want to float that out there. So yeah. So, to wrap this up, The Nostalgia Critic is a show that I liked for a while. And I think Doug has pulled some really good stuff out of The Nostalgia Critic. The Nostalgia Critic should have stayed dead in 2012. Doug should have moved on. Channel Awesome should have tried different things when it came to replacing the Nostalgia Critic. But no one there is genuinely has any kind of intelligence. And there were a lot of problems that persisted behind the scenes that none of us knew about, or not a lot of us knew about, until last year. The people that still support these people, you do you. Just know you're supporting shitty people. Okay? And to the people who say, who are talking about, I just want to enjoy the reviews away from the drama, you really can't. Like, you may be able to say that about, let's see, how about Michael Jackson? Let's bring that up for a second. You might be able to say that about Michael Jackson. Like, if you do believe the or if you just don't care about his controversies, you just want to enjoy his music, okay. A lot of his music did not really respond to anything within his normal life, outside of his own views seeping into some of the songs. But if you want to enjoy his hits, I don't think anyone has any problem with that. Let's see, Vic Mignogna. If anyone genuinely believes the shit that's going on with Vic Mignogna, and I'm currently waiting on an actual judge to decide whether or not Vic is, or a jury to decide if Vic is guilty on this shit, before I really say anything, one way or the other. And you, or if you just don't care, and you just want to enjoy Vic's voice acting or his music, I don't think anyone really has any problem with that, considering Vic is a talented voice actor and a talented singer who doesn't sound anything like he does in real life for the majority of his roles. That's something I think people can get over. And on top of that, a lot of his work doesn't really, unless if it's his Christian music, I don't think really relates to his own real life, you know? But when it comes to the Nostalgia Critic and Channel Awesome, they're too intrinsically linked for people to get over. Okay? So if you don't understand the reasons people have for disowning Doug and the Nostalgia Critic, or just starting to not like them, I think that you need to really evaluate what's been going on, and then also reevaluate the Nostalgia Critic and reevaluate Doug and a lot of other shit. Because if you even try to examine these things for a second, a lot of this shit is just bad. It really is. So, that's all I wanted to say within this video. This video got way longer than I wanted it to, but I got everything out that I wanted to say. And, yeah. So, really not much else to say. Links in the description, all my shit. Subscribe if you want. And I'll see you guys in the next one.